for you. Oh, look. And your viewers. Choose who can participate. Set a delay between messages. Hide or put people in timeout. Manage messages held for review. Add moderators to your channel. Nah, I don't think so. Let's close that one out. Let's start straight up and honest. YouTube, I think I can block their comments later, can't I? I don't know if I'll be able to. This is my first live, I think. Who knows? YouTube's been doing some pretty screwy stuff lately. I have to do lives because they won't let me do actual vids on here anymore and transfer them. They're down below 5 minutes now. I did a short one here on managers, and that may or may not get any views because managers don't like to listen to this stuff. And the funny thing is, field guys and shop guys get a little leery of listening to something like that because out here in the Everse or Digiverse, whatever you want to call it, gigabits, megabits, terabits, people get a little nervous about what are they going to record on me. Well, I retired, so I figured might as well talk. The funny thing is, if you want to sue me for something, let me tell you, I retired for back and knee injuries, just overuse over the years. So if you think I've got a lot of money from my Social Security and the 401k that the government raped, literally raped. Yeah, that 401k went to a rollover IRA. It got raped. Multiple thousands. I mean, we're talking approaching 10 grand wiped from existence. Just to convert something that was mine before, but you're not with the employer, gone. So I thought I paid the taxes on it. And I start taking money out before the prescribed time. Another batch of taxes, about the same amount, was taken out the next year. And then they hit us for income tax, taking my money out of my account to use after they raped every single piece of anything that resembled an employer match. Because trust me, Anderson wasn't that generous. In fact, they took 3 years of matching out. This is a managerial video. That's why this is in here. It isn't just sour grapes. It's you people need to do something about our retirement. 401k doesn't mean squat anymore, especially in a market that was raping me $35 to $100 per day in losses. In a money market. Never did before. In fact, under the last communist regime that was here in the United States back in the year 2009 onward for the next 8 years, I was the only one that didn't lose money because of the money market. So I decided to take some of that money and throw it, invest it in a company that was slowly growing and had good profitability. Yeah, it's a 50-50 shot whether I gained or lost, and in the end result, the longer as this presidency went on, the worse it got. And management did nothing about it either way, from either my company or the other company that I was invested in as well. I didn't roll that money over. I left it in that company, and it made about $5 last year. What can I tell you? It's bad. So that's one place management can clean things up. Protect your employees' retirement. They aren't going to have that much in most cases unless they're in a union. And the hard part of it is for you is there's going to be more unions because of the stress of an actual person retiring, and they don't have a pension to fall back on that adds to their Social Security. It's number one. Protect, make your employees secure. One of the biggest problems I used to have is, I'm going to say, 2 employers over the past years, because I was trying to reduce what I was doing, so my back and knee. I love what I was doing, but you know, you can't do undercarriage work on 50-ton dozers when you're in your 60s and your knee and back are worn out from working for the company for 10 plus years prior. Yeah. So I had to find a way to whittle down. Well, that wasn't what the companies were looking for. They wanted old guys that would do the heavy work that the young guys wouldn't do. They'd rather go scoop ice cream. Literally. What? Don't tell me that. I talked with a millennial that I worked with. He says, why aren't you doing this stuff? He says, they send me out here to do all this electronic stuff that I don't know a lot about. You would know more about it than me. And he says, They have you doing all the bull work. Would you do the bull work? I asked him. He says, no, not if I could come out here and do this electronic stuff. He says, with a blank check, they never ask me. I can go out 20 times. They never ask me what's going on or if they can help. Management, you're not helpful. No, I don't mean you need to come down on the kid like the hubs of hell, but you're not A. He's in his mid-20s. Nobody's teaching him. B, he had a substandard computer with poor operating system, and he couldn't even see his dang screen. That's another one. The other one was tooling. He was learning how to use the tooling by himself. Nobody in the shop would give him any help because no one had actually used the equipment that was amalgamated from 3 or 4 other companies in there, plus auctions. Nobody knew what to do with it. So the kid's over there spending a week trying to split a tractor that might have been split in 3 or 4 hours. Trying to put together a bunch of garbage parts, find out what works and what doesn't. And there I was coming into the company new, and 3 years later, what did he have? The same substandard garbage. Clean up your tooling. Dag nabbit, clean up your tooling. You're better off having too little tooling because you threw crap away so they don't have to go fumbling through it. Now, there's some tooling that's almost never useful anymore. It's from stuff back in the 60s and 70s and 80s that farm equipment dealers will never get rid of. Well, for you little guys out there in young management, don't ever throw it out. Only a fool would throw it out. For you in middle management, now I'm talking service departments directly here. What you need to do is go through the company. Yes, you personally. Don't send a minion. Have a minion do your paperwork. You're worthless unless you know what's going on in your company. You're worthless if you're not going to the same training that your service managers and shop people are going to. I don't mean manager service. I mean actual serviceman schools. You need to be in there to know what they're being taught. It's different than what managers are. At Anderson Equipment, that was blatantly obvious. Those people knew jack squat. The salesman knew more than people in managing service. It was disgusting. Elon Musk? That's right. They didn't hire engineers and technicians to manage the place. They hired managers to manage something they had no clue what was going on. Oh, look at that. Fuel and oxidizer. Boom. Wow. That wasn't supposed to happen. Now I get to manage the disaster. Woohoo! And they don't have any idea how it happened. No, you may not be a direct engineer in that stuff, but at least having an engineering degree for that. Are you kidding? I probably have known in the past a dozen guys that could manage Boeing better than Boeing's current management. Why? Because we have an idea what makes stuff go boom. You guys don't care unless it's on the end of a golf club or in the fuel tank of your hypercar. That's it. That's all you care about. We get that. It's obvious people stranded at the space station for 6 months, as it's going to turn out to be, because of your incompetence on many levels. There are too many levels that were pushed ahead when the answer should have been no, we stop. Don't give me that crap. That spacecraft is up there because there's valves that were left in storage longer than their service date. And then they were stuck into the spacecraft that was held up for months. So they're far beyond their service date. I said, why? Even sealed. Once they're put into service, they're exposed to the air, exposed to moisture in the air, the contaminants in the air. It doesn't matter that you have a clean building, which most don't anymore. And then you test it. Now you have the problem of exposure in multiple levels. And there they are at the space station with what? Bad software due to management decisions to either limited computers or limited software to try and simplify instead of having multiple computer systems that could either diverge or merge, and valves that never should have been put into service as far as testing on the launch pad, let alone up in space. It's a long history of this. Managerial decisions. Exact same attitude comes into the shops, service shops, and the middle management. As far as service work, service tooling is the worst I have ever seen. I got out in 1980, and when I got out of the college there, it was terrible what we had in college. And then when I got into the shops, it was far worse than what we had in the colleges. A lot of our tooling in the college was 10, 20 years old. And it was still better than what was available out in the field. And they were claiming they were working on a horrible budget. I mean, terrible. The first place I got out of, they admitted they didn't have it. And he says, no, we don't have squat because we don't have a lot of money. We're a new company. I think at the time they're only a few years old. He says, we build what we need, or we find a way around it. And the manager says, and these boys here can find a way around anything. He says, if I set them to it and they could get paid for it, they'd be to the moon and back in some old iron relic. He says, they scare me what they can do. And he says, and I'm old. I thought I did everything. Never trust old, experienced journeyman mechanics in their 40s. Oh, man. You set them on a challenge, you better keep close watch. One of two things. Close watch or get out of the way. Close watch to learn and for safety factor, or get out of the way and let them murder themselves, not everybody else. Well, anymore, there's so many safety factors, you can't do that. But you need to be in the shop now and then. If you have a service writer or a secretary, so to speak, one way or the other, then you should be in the shop more often than any service manager I've seen after that particular one, old guy named Bob. And he was getting close to my age. He was actually a little younger then than I am now. And he made sure he knew what was going on in the shop. He came out and asked questions. Sometimes the question would be, Jim, what kind of stupid stunt are you trying now? He'd say, well, Bob, since you dragged yourself all the way out of your office to find out. He'd come over and he says, you see what kind of smart mouth attitude I get? And he says, so I have to poke him once in a while, just let him know I know what's going on. And you say, well, that's not what you would call professional today. But that's exactly what I'm looking for you to work at. The new millennium, so to speak. That was back in 1980. Bob knew what was going on so much that when Gib Harrington, the owner and manager of the company at the time, called in or came down to see what was going on, he didn't have to ask everybody in the room what was happening. He could make a phone call, a quick intercom to Bob, and he knew what was happening because Bob knew what was happening. And if he didn't know, he found out. When it came to any service information, the guys would say, well, I'm stumped. And what are you stumped on? They could compare notes. And when they told him what was going on, Bob could tell him, well, you know what? Sounds like you skipped something. Or he'd say, now I can tell the customer what he doesn't want to hear. We can't fix that piece of crap. And he would tell the customer. He didn't have to worry about being considered a failure. The most egregious, and this is a little extreme for middle management, but not that far out. Now, Bill J. from Anderson never hears this, and you're going to hear another complaint about good old Jerry Skiff. Walked in brand spanking new. He'd already mouthed off at us, blown his attitude all over. He was going to straighten up the most profitable service shop that sold more hours than any other shop in the company, 2-1 at the time. He was going to straighten us up because we were problematic. So how can we be problematic? We're not even ever in the shop. We're out in the field working. We don't have time. And so in fact, we shouldn't be here having this discussion. We've got too much to do. And he launched on us and let us have it. Then he got wind that there was a machine that we were rebuilding again for the third time that year, resealing. And he came down and walked in the door and said, this must be the demolition hammer. I said, yeah, an old Allied that shouldn't be here. He said, well, we're going to find out and get to the bottom of this. We can't keep resealing this all the time. We can't. And I sat there, and the customers looked at me and said, the customer shop manager looked at me and said, who does this guy think he is? And I said, well, welcome to meet our new Eastern Area Service Representative, Jerry Skiff. Jeff says, and what does he think he knows? He's never even looked at this hammer before. You and I know that. He doesn't. And Skip says, what do you mean? I said, you've never seen this hammer before, and you've already got a decision made. And Jeff sat there and says, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Since I'm the one with the engineering degree, you two aren't. And he says, Seth and I have already come to the conclusion why in the world we're resealing this thing. The hammer should have been retired years ago. Well, that's not an says it is an appropriate question and an appropriate answer for the machine, this type of machine. It's worn out. We've looked it over. We've seen the wear marks. He says, I see where it's been leaking. I see why it's been leaking. And he said, the fix for it is to remachine all the parts or replace the hammer. The hammer should have been replaced years ago. And he says, the managers before me said it should have been replaced years ago. And he says, my employer doesn't want to replace it. So we're going to be resealing it until further notice. That's not it! And Skiff launched and started yelling at both of us again. Middle management narcissistic arrogance to the severe level that he darn near got himself cold cocked on the spot, and Jeff is not a violent person. Well, that's just, no, it's not. That is not an extreme. Empire Tractor, years later, guy walks in, brand new position, bragging about all the places he'd been. And I'm standing there with a young service writer who hadn't even seen 40 yet. And there I was in 60-something. And he says to me, you think he's 40 yet? Maybe. How many places has he been? I says, I don't know. I have purposely been at multiple places in the last 20-some years. Purposely, because I wouldn't tolerate some of the behavior the companies had. And I said, and in my entire 40 years of being out in the field, I haven't had that many employers. He says, that was what I was wondering. I said, yep. I said, I was self-unemployed for 10 years because I wouldn't put up with lies, deceit, and deception. He says, I think you just got your fill of it, didn't you? Yes, we did. Again, Andy Nethercott was in between those two. What a worthless pig. And you say, you're calling people out by... I am. Just in case some of you run into these people. They should be retired by now, hopefully. Nethercott covered up with more lies than I could ever imagine just in the 6 months I had to put up with a stupid little jackass. Barking and screaming at his people underneath him in the shops, hollering at me, doing the same thing that Skiff did, giving customers a hard time because they knew how to fix this thing. To give you an example, they'd already been through it with one, but Skiff walked out and got so many people angry. There was 3 times in a 1-week period I was told by customers, if he shows up here again and we don't call the sheriff, he's going out in an ambulance. We won't put up with that kind of arrogance here. We won't be dealing with you people. Just a few service calls. Says we'll take our service elsewhere if that's the people running your company. They hired Nethercott shortly thereafter, who was worse. Skiff was failing upward, doing well. I'm serious. That same barking attitude came in. Customers, other managers had to put up with it. I want! And that's all it was. Severe narcissism. Demands. Not sitting down and formulating a plan. Not playing an actual leadership role that they thought they were in. There's no consequences to their actions as long as they barked it out. And so I went out there and tried. I told them what I demanded. And it said, no. You told them what you wanted. In the end result, you never asked 2 questions. A, is it possible? And B, what's the plan to get there? You just demanded it and hoped they got there. Because in the end result, if you didn't help plan it, then if something went wrong in the middle, you had something else to bark at. That's middle management for you. That's my experience with it. Now, in fairness to Empire Tractor, their new little weasel there finally came back with his tail between his legs. And I said, so, we're not getting thus and such. Because being a guy near retirement, and he and I had talked before about a few things, because of my past, there was a lot of stuff that he was almost kind of poking me to see if he could use me as a source. And I said, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff I've done through this. And we were able to compare some notes, and he started letting down his guard a little bit. Then he came in later and I said, so, how badly did you get your butt burned this time? He said, what do you mean? I said, we're not getting thus and such, so and da-da-da-da-da that you had tried to promise. He said, no. He says, in fact, and then he stopped and I said, oh, I know, you got scorched. I said, why do you think I'm here? He said, what do you mean? I said, do you think I came down from a $30 an hour job to 24 for nothing? And he says, so, yeah. I said, you could say if my managers prior weren't lying sacks of crap, you could say that I was completely insubordinate and should have been fired. The problem of it was they were wrong, they knew they were wrong, and they were not going to back off. I said, you're in that position right now. I can see it written all over your young face. He said, well, yeah. They want you to take the crap for their decisions. They're not putting you in a position to make decisions. He says, no, they're not. And that's in fairness to the corporate service manager of Empire Tractor, if he's still there. So as much as we were skeptical of his past, I said that can be a make or break, but there's nothing in between, and that was one of the things the service writer agreed with. Hey, Jake, if you're out there, dude, peace and long life and happy knees. But the guy up above that department was a youngin' stuck into a position where all he was told was, we want this and you make it happen. Well, I'm sorry for you and Empire Tractor up in the upper echelons. You're a bunch of flippin' cowards that don't even know what's happening underneath you if that's the way you treat somebody in corporate service. Seriously, don't tell me any different. Been around as long as most of you guys and enough companies to know I've seen it fail. And then they put up a sign, employees wanted. Basically saying, next! We're tired of abusing this one and they won't put up with it anymore. Next! Tools, disaster. He tried to, I told him several things in the shop. I said, X, Y, and Z, put those in place, it'll be a totally different shop. All right, I'll look into it. He came back. Not only was there X, Y, and Z might be packaged up and thrown out so it's not in front of our faces, telling them that it's about $100 to $150 each to fix a $5,000 tool to put back in service because they don't even want to spend the $50 to fix either one of them in a temporary sense. That was Empire Tractor for you. We've got 3 lifts in the shop. Yeah, 2 of them are non-functional almost. And unsafe, and in any other shop other than an ag shop, would have been reg tagged and put in a corner in order to be scrapped within the next year. Well, yeah, but we're an ag shop, so you can still use it. Oil spewing all over the floor while you're lifting something. As soon as you stop pumping, it's leaking down. It's better than nothing. And in the shop they go, or in the office they go. Don't know what to tell you. So, how do you get around it? I don't know. That's why I'm talking to you. I'm hoping some of you in middle management in the last 24 minutes understand some of the dilemma. The gentleman before that I was talking to in Empire Tractor actually made an attempt, and he got his tail burnt. But the thing of it was, that's one of the reasons that if you are a good employee, you would be willing to lose your job for those underneath you, if you're in management, to do what's right or to push what's right as far as you can go and walk right up to the edge of insubordination and take 1 or 2 steps over now and then just to give the management up above an idea. And they say, you can get fired for that. And you look them square in the face and said, I know. Doesn't that give you an idea how critical this situation is? But the problem is there's people with no moral values anymore out there running around that won't even stick their neck out to give their employer that message that it's this critical. Peace and long life, folks.